Hello and welcome to Sunlight on the Lino, the podcast that celebrates, discusses, and enjoys everything related to South East London's favourite band, Squeeze. Today we're talking about a phone number. It was a phone number of Glenn's flat when he lives in Greenwich, but is also the title of one of Squeeze's biggest hits in the United States, reaching the upper 30s of the charts in the US and number 91 in the UK charts. It's none other than the song that divides everyone. It's 853 5937. In the book Song by Song, Glenn confesses to being ashamed of this song and holding himself responsible for this utter waste of time. Chris says that he's also disgusted with himself. He says it's a nonsensical lyric married to the tune in No Man's Land, and how they managed to create such a monster and see it become a hit single absolutely amazes them. Today I'm joined by James Griffiths, author of When the Pop Music Played, a book that discusses the early years of Squeeze.
So James, what do you think of this song?
Well, that is a leading question, Adrian. A leading question. Well, this song, 853 5937, so it comes from the Babylon and On album, 1987. And I've got a very clear, crystal memory of seeing them doing it on the French and Saunders show. And I watched that with my mum and dad. And I remember it was almost toe-curlingly embarrassing. It was just one of those moments where I just, at the time, I so wanted it to be better than it was, because neither of my parents liked pop music or liked Squeeze. And when they came on doing this song, I was thinking, oh no, they're doing 853 5937. I think part of me kind of thought right from the start, there's something slightly naff about this song. There's something about it which is kind of not classic Squeeze, and I kind of wished that they'd not done it on that show. I remember watching it thinking, "Oh God!" But then something strange started happening over the ensuing months and years. Every time I listened to the album, I'd get to 853 5937, and I would have to cue it up again. So I'd listen to the song. I'd listen to side one, get to 853, and after 853 finished, I'd have to listen to it again before I moved on to In Today's Room. It was the only song on that album where every time I heard it, I wanted to hear it again. And I thought, it's something strange going on here. And to this day, this is no exaggeration. I cannot listen to it once. I have to listen to it at least twice. And so,
Is it some sort of connection with you personally with that song, or
yeah, there's something about it so I can split, I can carve it into two. Objectively, I can hear there's certain things about it which are maybe not great, and I can see, and we'll talk about that in a minute if you like. And I can maybe hear why Chris and Glenn didn't like it. But I think the song has got some sort of emotional undertow to it. I can't put it into words really. It's just that strange combination of just chord changes, the story in the song, which is a strange story, and again we'll talk about that in a moment. But I just find it a very emotional song. I can't really put it into words any more than that. I just get that sort of goosebumpy feeling. I think it's the fade out. I think a song is always worth playing again if the fade out is great, and it's got a particularly great fade out. Just this endlessly repeating chorus. It just sounds so abject. Just this kind of like this answerphone message, just repeating, 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 just like fading away. I don't know, you just get to the end of it and you just think, oh God, I want to hear that again. I
yeah?
want to, I want to, I want to relive this little story of this guy, just clearly abject, just ringing this girl who can't get past this bloody answer phone. And
Well, as someone who has 853 in their top three Squeeze songs of all time, I can totally agree with you. I think it's such an
yeah,
undiscovered, unloved gem. I mean, the fans seem to quite like it, but I can personally attest that they won't Squeeze won't even talk about it, and you'll get given a slightly dirty look from them if you even try and mention it. Again, personal experience there.
it's not that original as a kind of idea for a song. I mean, the song it sort of reminds me of is Telephone Line by ELO, which is the classic thing, guy trying to get through to his girlfriend on the phone. She's not answering, she's not picking up. It's as old as the hills, really. I'm sure there are other songs going back into the mist of time which have that theme. There was one that highlighted. There's a song called 6345789. Are you aware of that one?
Yes, I think it's not the Tommy Two-Tone one. It's the other one, isn't it? There's three of them. There's three songs that have that number.
Well,
It's not Tommy 867 because 8675309 Jenny or
I know
Jenny
it
Jenny.
from Ry Cooder did a version of it in 1980,
Oh.
but it was a song by Eddie Floyd and Steve Cropper. It had been done originally by Wilson Pickett, I think, back in the 60s.
Oh, right. Oh, wow.
Yeah, but that song is not one of these ones where the guy's trying to get through. Well, he is trying to get through, but it's quite a positive song. It's just basically him saying, if you need me, if you want to be with me, hey girl, all you have to do is ring this number, kind of thing. It's one of those songs. So this is very much a can't get through type of song, and I guess we're back in the 1980s when answer phones were a thing.
Yes.
I was sort of reminded of these things, and sort of younger people might not know that we used to have these big clunky metal boxes that kind of sat next to our telephones, and there would be an automated message, and so yeah. So the song is oddly non-specific as a song, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But there's something odd about it because we know this girl's name is Angela. And I was thinking that there's not that many songs in the Squeeze canon where Chris actually goes to the trouble of naming a character. It's actually, he doesn't do it that often. There's one that I can think of, and that is Michael in Slap and Tickle. So we get to find out that the protagonist of Slap and Tickle is called Michael. We don't get to find out what the girl is called. He doesn't reveal her name. And if you go back through all those songs, all those great, relationship songs on Argy Bargy, East Side Story, we never get to find out who any of them are. Think of Vanity Fair. We don't get to know what that girl's called. We don't get to find out what the names are of the people in Piccadilly. It's not something that Chris does. I find it interesting in this song. He thinks to himself, right, I'm going to give this girl a name. She's Angela. Angela can't come to the phone. And it just, I don't know, it gives the song this kind of nub of something real. Yeah, it's Angela. It's not just some unspoken woman. It's Angela. But then, apart from that, it's so sketchy. The story of the song is so sketchy. Like, we don't get to find out, is she at home? Is she avoiding him? We don't get to find out whether the guy, the best friend who he rings up, we don't get to find out, is he with her or not? Is it just this total paranoia? And then the song, it sort of cops out lyrically because we don't get to find out what happens. We don't get to find out whether, because the final verse is this, should I go and find out if they're together? I've got to find out that this isn't true.
It leaves on the question mark, doesn't it? It's
totally.
It's almost like a it's almost like a cliffhanger on a song, isn't it? And in the Squeeze world, you know that there will be a part two, isn't it? Like they've done that a few songs, haven't they? They've done a part two, like Up the Junction. The family from that is featured in a few songs, isn't it? Moving Story from Domino, and
that's
King
right,
George
yeah.
Street as well. I think is potentially the family from Up the Junction a few years later.
Yeah, and I think, didn't Chris say that the Separate Beds couple ended up in another song as well?
Yeah,
I've got a feeling they did.
He did. I'm trying to remember that one now. There's just so much in the Squeeze. It's like a mega universe, isn't it? Where you can sort of plot these people and these relationships, and like they were in a song, years ago. And they links back.
But in a way, I think that's what this song is lacking. Even though we know she's called Angela, and I think that's a really nice touch. If you compare it to a lot of Chris's relationship songs, he really doesn't seem to want to go to any trouble to actually fill the song with his usual level of detail. Chris's songs are usually very densely populated with kind of objects and things. Think of the omelette pans in Woman's World, or the shower and the Scrabble set in Mumbo Jumbo, or the
Chicken Bones in Melody Motel. That's
exactly,
great little image there, isn't it?
Yeah. So you can sort of imagine a parallel universe where Chris had written this song and it had filled it with all his usual stuff. So we see the guy maybe in his flat eating the remains of a sort of Kentucky takeout or something.
Yeah.
And then he sort of looks around the room. He sees the cigarette burning in the ashtray, the usual kind of Chris Difford thing, or he sees an old pair of knickers hanging on the lampshade or something.
Yeah.
And he decides he's going to ring her. and the story would unfold from there. Usually, if it was like, in the Argy Bargy era, you'd get some details, wouldn't you? And the story, in fact, if you think of a song like Vicky Verky, where he moves the song on, doesn't he? So you get one verse, and then next minute he's in Borstal, she's having an abortion, and then they're back together again. They're on holiday, and he sort of moves us through the story quite nicely. Up the Junction, another classic one where we see this entire movie really happening in whatever it is, 3 minutes.
3 minutes,
This
yeah.
song, yeah, this song has nothing of that at all. It's just the barest sketch of an idea.
And
And
even
what do you think? Because I wonder whether maybe he thought that that's the kind of song that A&M wanted. I don't know.
it has got that sort of commercial sheen to it, that commercial veneer to it, isn't it? I think it's, I mean, musically as well, it's quite sparse for Squeeze. There's quite a lot of gaps in it, especially from that Babylon and On era where they were given free reign of a mixing desk, and you listen to things like The Prisoner that's just loud and all over the place, and Hourglass that's full of synths on it. It's quite sparse. There's quite a lot of gaps, and it's quite minimal for Squeeze, I think. So I think it's had that sort of commercial edge to it, and it looked like they wanted an Hourglass Part 2 and
Hmm.
thought that they could get it through 853, and it was. I mean, it was a very big success in America, and I think that's also another reason that Squeeze don't like it, is because they've got this huge back catalogue of some absolutely amazing songs that we could list all day, and here
Hmm.
you go, you've got this song that's perhaps got a slightly novelty element to it, and it's a phone number. It's mentioning a gadget that's quite fashionable at the time, an answering machine, and that does really, really well. And perhaps I think with Squeeze, they'll probably look at that song and go, "There's not a lot of depth to this." From their perspective, I don't think
Yeah.
so. I'm with you on this one. I can see this whole great story, this great vignette being played out. So I don't know if you know this song by Pulp called "Answer Phone."
I don't think I do.
It's almost exactly the same story. It's the B-side to Disco 2000, but it is almost, it is identical story, which is guy wants to get in touch with a girl, can't do it because the answer phone's blocking the message. Is she with someone else? I think she is. I don't
Yeah.
want to find out if that's true. It's very, very similar to it, and it has that sort of technologically based story. I mean, I don't know what the equivalent would be now. I'm far too old to. Probably should ask my son what the equivalent is now when you can't get through to someone you're trying
I suppose it's
to
that thing where you send a WhatsApp message to somebody and you don't get the two green ticks.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Are they?
maybe.
Great one. Yeah. Are they looking at it? Are they read it? Who are they with? I was also going to talk about the middle eight, because I think this middle
Yes.
eight is absolutely brilliant. So this is where the song takes a different tone, if you
Hmm.
will. It comes from being a sort of plodding along in it's just a couple, two or three chords. I think it's like E7, D, and B minor 7. So a few like jazzy chords, and then it goes to a B flat key signature, which is quite a jump around musically. It's quite, I'll say it's unusual. It's not for Squeeze. It's unusual to have a song that doesn't jump around musically. But this one, it
Yeah.
particularly sort of takes this bit, and then you've got Jules's piano sort of plodding along in the background there, and it just has a different. It has a different tone, different sound. What's your sort of take on that middle eight?
Well, what I find interesting about the middle eight is that it's I think, let me get this right. I think it's Jules's piano that ushers it in, and it's Gilson's drums that usher it out. So you get Jules. I think Jules plays a little piano piece going into it, doesn't he?
That's right.
Or have I imagined that?
Yes, but yeah, no, you're right. It is. Yeah, it's all the music stops apart from a piano, and
Yeah.
then it does that
Oh
jump
yes, yes.
between,
Da, 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 da. Yeah,
and it
yeah.
jumps between those two keys. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, and then it goes out into the guitar solo with a really great, stylish bit of Gilson, a classic Gilson drum fill, which sort of reminds me a little bit of the fills he does in Heaven on East Side Story. He's got
Oh, all around
this,
the toms.
yeah, just this great, really well executed bit of drum stuff. He does a great job of miming that actually on the French and Saunders show. He gets a real nice close up as he does that drum fill. Obviously, he's just miming, but he really does look like he's doing it. And I think you're right. I think, as well as the fade out, I think it's the middle eight which is the real emotional part of this song. it's always stuck with me. I tell you, every single time I go on a tube train in London, if I'm on the Northern Line, I will always look at the top and find Mill Hill
Yes,
every
yes.
single
Same
time.
here. Same here. Oh dear. God, we're a pair, aren't we?
Yeah, so I suppose this is the moment where Difford does do something quite sort of Difford-esque, just the reference to, she's in Bermondsey. No, I'm in Mill Hill, she's in Bermondsey. It's the end of the
I think
earth
she's
on
in
the
Mill
Northern
Hill.
Line. Oh,
She's in Mill
she's in
Hill.
Mill Hill,
I'm in
I'm in
Bermondsey. Yeah.
Bermondsey. Yeah. So again, it's interesting. So we've got Angela, and we know now that the two
Mm,
places in the song are Mill Hill and Bermondsey. Now, I mean, to people who don't live in London or people who live outside the UK, these are just names. They're not
mm.
anything which is going to mean anything. But it's, I suppose it turns this song into one of Squeeze's sort of London songs. I mean, they're kind of known as a quintessentially London band. And I can't think off the top of my head which other Squeeze songs mention London-based locations. You might be able to help me with this one.
Yeah, there's a few,
Uh,
and the recent ones, and there's one that mentions Marion Wilson Park, isn't there, on the Knowledge,
yes,
at
yeah,
quite some length. And yeah,
yeah.
there must
I
be
mean,
quite a few others. A Pace and Place, of course, King George Street.
Peyton Place, King George Street, which is
Yes,
Chris's home, of course. Deptford is mentioned in It's Not Cricket.
that's
Clapham,
right.
of
Yeah,
course, at the
yes,
junction.
yes, yes.
So the fact that we've got Mill Hill and Bermondsey in this song, despite Chris and Glenn having this sort of line that they've got now of 8535937 is lousy, it's not proper Squeeze, it's whatever. The fact that you've got those places in there, I think that does help to sort of ground the song in this sort of reality. It's not just another sort of cliched take on this um, age-old trope of, a man trying to get through to a woman. Chris does go to some effort to just paint in these tiny little details. It's just that he doesn't, in the rest of the song, he doesn't seem to want to do that. So I think that's why the middle eight, or one of the reasons why the middle eight works. You've got the music, as you say, it sort of changes gear, doesn't it? It changes pace, changes rhythm. I don't know. I can't think of other Squeeze songs that just quite do what this song does.
No,
And then with the fade out,
yeah.
and then we've got the guitar solo we need to talk about as well, which is another interesting side avenue that we can go down.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think before we do that, I just want to talk about the Mill Hill Bermondsey bit, because like you, it
Yes.
fascinates me, and I love it. Brings such a, a personal element to this song. We've got a name, we've got two places now. It doesn't get too much more personal than that. I've always thought, because I've wondered if it's if the places mentioned there for the metering, so they fit in nicely in the sentence. You've got a two-syllable Mill Hill, and then you've got Bermondsey, which obviously is three. I wonder if it's that. I hope it's not. I want to think it's more than that. But I was wondering, because obviously Mill Hill is North London, and
Yeah.
Bermondsey being South London, whether there's a divide there. The metaphorical. I might be looking into this too much, but hey, that's what us Squeeze fans do, right? The river obviously separating them, and they feel poles apart, because as any Londoner will tell you, North and South London is very different in many different ways, and that's something that's is sort of accepted as
Hmm.
part of London. So I always wonder if it's something to do with that, because as far as I'm aware, Bermondsey is obviously linked quite strongly to Chris Difford's growing up, and well, all his Squeezes. They Bermondsey is just almost next to, like, sort of Deptford, Greenwich, that kind of area. But Mill Hill's a bit quite a random one to do, but it is at the end of the Northern Line, of course, as you'll know. It just sort of slips off. It's got its
Yeah.
own little separate little line, almost, really, isn't it? That just pops
Yeah.
off there as well. So
Well, I love the way that he doesn't just describe it as the end of the line. He describes it as it's the end of
the
the
Earth,
earth,
yeah,
the end of the earth
yeah,
on the Northern Line. And that is a very clever image, because anybody who's gone on, the London Underground, you get on these outer trains which leave central London, and they just carry on and they carry on and they carry on and they carry on, and you finally get off and you're in some just desolate outer suburb somewhere, and you got no idea where you are. I mean, I'm not from London. I'm not a Londoner, and I never feel at home when I'm in London, but particularly when I end up on one of these far-flung stations. I get off the train and I just think, where the bloody hell am I now? And how am I ever going to get back to anywhere where I can like get home, you know. And I think that image works great. You know, it's the end of the earth on the Northern Line. You get this sense of the guy thinking, shit, she won't pick up the phone. Therefore, I'm going to have to get on the train and make loads of connections,
Mm.
go all the way, try and get out there somewhere, you know. And he probably knows when he gets there that she's not going to be there. So it's quite desolate, really.
So I do wonder, and some of my Londoner-based friends and anyone from the area who's listening will probably know that the Jubilee line extension that has Bermondsey Station was only built in about 1999. So I'm not sure if when they actually wrote the song, whether there
Hmm.
was a Bermondsey Station. I might be wrong on that, but my underground knowledge isn't that great. But I just wonder if that's part of it as well. That it is so desolate because he can't get back because he's stuck in Mill Hill and he's got to get back to Bermondsey somehow.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, you know, Squeeze's London. I'm sure there's a book to be written just about
Yes.
that one one topic. But
You could do a whole day. I mean, that's certainly a topic for future podcast is going to be looking at the places. There's so
yes, definitely.
many, and it even goes outside of London. So you've got places sort of around here. You've got Maidstone as a
Mm,
place as well, and there's strong connections with Squeeze's early days and Benenden in Kent
yeah,
as well. And then you've got like the studios up in Monmouth,
yeah.
famous
Wales, yeah.
ones. Yeah, I can't remember the name of them now, but the ones where everyone's recorded there, haven't they? Rockfield,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Rockfield.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. Yes, as
Where
well.
Queen did Bohemian Rhapsody there, didn't they?
Correct. Yes.
Hmm.
So James, the solo. I know you're raring to talk to me about Glenn's infamous solo here. That's not actually Glenn's, is it?
No, now you're going to have to tell me what the Jimi Hendrix track is because I've forgotten.
Is it Freebird? Is there a song called Freebird?
I think so. Yeah, it's from from the Cry of Love album, one of the posthumous ones.
I know it's
Um,
got a bird title in it. Yeah, I think it is Freebird. Yes.
Yeah. So years ago, back in it would have been the mid-90s, I was sharing a house with a guy who had a great record collection, and he had this album by Hendrix, Cry of Love, and I snuck it back to my room because I was fond of doing that, just you know, borrowing his records, listening to them, and putting them back. I'd always put them back, but I played this one, and this guitar piece starts at the start of this song, and it was like somebody walked over my grave. It was like all the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I thought, what the hell is that? I recognized that from somewhere. And for a moment, I just thought, oh no, it's going to be one of those awful times when you hear something and you just cannot place it. You know what I mean? It drives you nuts, doesn't it? You
Yes.
hear a piece of music and you just think, I've heard that somewhere, and I just literally cannot place it. But it didn't take me long. It only took me, I think it took me half an hour. I kept singing it in my head, going, what the hell is that? And then I thought, shit, that is the guitar solo from 8535937, note for note, not altered, not changed, not adapted. It's got a different guitar sound on it. It's got a
Mhm.
quite thick sort of 80s chorus kind of effect on it. Not like the sort of, I don't know what
Almost like
Hendrix was using.
mono
Some,
sort of sound, wasn't it? There's quite sort of rudimentary back then, back on tape, and
yeah, it was probably put through what's a wah wah pedal or something in Hendrix's case, you know, so it didn't sound the same. And in fact, what's quite funny is the guy whose record it was, Alan, his name was, he was not a Squeeze fan. He was really into like 60s psychedelic music, like hard, hard rock kind of thing, you know. And I played him, I said, Alan, this is incredible. Listen to this. And I played him 8535937. And when he heard the solo on it, he was like, oh my God, they said that's shocking, shockingly bad. And I said, what do you mean? And he went, "Oh, it sounds terrible." So to him, it was completely sacrilegious. It was like this great sort of iconic piece of 60s psychedelia turned into this very, very sort of day glow 80s radio friendly radio hit. You know, he was not impressed by that at all. But I don't know. I just find it interesting that Glenn did that. So he must have thought to himself, right, time for a guitar solo. What shall I do? I know, I'll just lift a Jimi Hendrix solo note for note, stick it on the record. Maybe we'll get sued, maybe we won't. Let's just take a chance on this. I'm assuming that happened, or maybe he did get A&M to check with Hendrix's people and go, is it okay if we do this? But
Yeah, I also
I don't
wondered
know.
because it's post the artist's death, whether there's some sort of copyright expiration or something on it. I'm not an expert on that area, but I do wonder if that was it. I always thought that's because it's not. I don't believe he's credited on
No,
the
no, no,
single,
no credit, no credit, no, no.
and the name of that song is "Nightbird Flying" by Jimi
Okay.
Hendrix. That one, if
Mm,
you want to look it up and listen and compare and just hear how just
yeah.
well, it's not even slightly different. It's just as James says, it's note for note.
It's note for note, but though this is the sort of genius of Glenn is that it's so perfect in 8535937. I mean, yes, he could have done his own solo, he could have written something, but it wouldn't have been as good as that. That exact pattern of notes is exactly what's needed in that part of the song, I think. I
Yes.
think it's perfect. It's not the tune of the song, but it seems to be related in some way. And who knows, maybe the whole idea of the song musically came from that solo. We don't know, do we? Maybe he was messing around with that solo one day and thought to himself, "Oh, maybe we could do something with this." I mean, you know better than me if the chords are the chords in that solo section anything which you could extrapolate back to the verse part of 853 or the chorus, or is it just flown in there completely sort of
Yeah,
separately as a
the chords underneath the solo are the same as the verse, I believe.
okay, well,
Interesting. I'm trying to think it through my head. Yeah, they are. The E minor seven and D and B minor seven. I think it's all it is there. It's quite simple.
yeah.
Um, um, okay, James. So what I'd like to talk about now is some of the design elements and the visual elements of 8535937. So at the time, Squeeze were using Stylo Rouge to do all of their artwork, and it came from the album Babylon and On, which has a picture of a gurning gentleman and some very colourful Squeeze lettering on it. So looking at the single front cover,
Hmm.
it's an interesting one. I'll leave it that way. I'll describe it. So it has Squeeze 8535937 written down the side of the single. And then you've got this very, very basic line drawing, almost of a very glum looking person. It's almost like something, and I don't mean to offend Stylo Rouge or Squeeze. It looks like something a child might have drawn. But there's a picture almost like of a cutout of an old style phone that has been sort of cut out of a newspaper or something like that put
Hmm.
on the table, and this person's looking very glum and just looking at this phone. It's just to me, it doesn't really fit in with the Babylon and On aesthetics of that time.
No, well, Squeeze never seemed to have a great deal of luck, did they, at certain crucial times in their career? I'm thinking of the sleeve for Labeled with Love, which I think had to be withdrawn, didn't it? Got a feeling.
That was the ransom one, wasn't it? Where Label with Love was written like it was like a ransom note, and I think they hated it so much that
Yeah.
they had it withdrawn just because it probably looked so threatening.
I'm going to have to look this up because I haven't looked at my 45 of 853 for a long time. I don't think I've ever particularly given that much attention, really, because I'm not a very visual person. So if a design is very strong, it will leap out at me and I will kind of like it. But I won't really understand why I like it. I won't sort of analyze it. I'll just go, "Ooh, right, yeah, that's good." Like I loved the 45 single of Cool for Cats. I just loved the whole iconography of that, with the sort of felt tip drawings of the band on the back. It just grabbed me totally. This particular image, I think it's not sort of strong enough for me to kind of notice it almost. I think I would have just looked at it and gone, "Oh, right, whatever." But now I'm looking at it. Mm, yeah.
It's
I guess
definitely
it
basic.
Yeah, I guess it does sort of sum up the song, and in a way, we've talked, haven't we, about the fact that the story is so sketchy, and it's quite a sketchy design, and it is at the end of the day, it is a guy looking pretty forlorn with a telephone. So maybe that's all you need. I don't know.
It's simple like the song, and I noticed the one I'm looking at. It says 8535937, the telephone song,
Hmm.
underneath it, which I've never seen it. I've never known it being subtitled as the telephone song, but
The
that
telephone
perhaps,
song.
yeah, that
No.
perhaps just shows how they were pushing it commercially because,
Hmm.
at the time, James, you and I will remember going into record shops and saying, what's that song that, it does this or it goes like this. And I imagine some people have gone, what's that telephone song? The one
Yes,
that's
I
got
can
a
imagine
number in.
it. Yeah, I would imagine it really driving some people up the wall, actually, working in record shops. People coming and going after the French and Saunders appearance, you can imagine people coming and
Yes.
going, "I want that Squeeze song with a phone number on it," and they're going, "Oh God." So I guess we should also quickly talk about the video, although I'm struggling to remember actually much about it other than that I suppose it's one of Squeeze's more big budget videos, is it? It seems like it's got a bit of money behind it.
So the video starts off with a sort of one of those countdown images that were quite popular around the 80s, to say well, it went on when they were doing the harmony bit at the beginning, when the voices were saying the telephone number. And then we go on to a big budget set, which has the members of the band just walking around it. It looks like a giant circuit board.
Ah,
You've
yes.
got the members of the band playing along. You've got Keith Wilkinson's playing an Ormston fretless upright bass, and you've got Chris with his guitar. Glenn looks very tired. I've got to say, Glenn doesn't look like he's particularly into it. But one particularly interesting part of this video is that there is a cardboard cutout of Jules Holland.
Oh God, of
Do you
course.
remember this? Yes, coming back to you now.
It is. It is. Yeah, yeah.
It's got some very bad
Jules.
editing in it as well. There's some very bits where you see it literally
Yeah.
clipping apart, and you see almost two Glens on one screen at one point.
Is this another case of Julian was on holiday? I wonder.
It was, and also to add another kind of celebrity showbiz element to it. This video was, of course, directed by Adrian Edmondson.
Of course, as had been Hourglass.
Indeed, and trust me to
Yeah,
open my
yeah.
mouth,
Yes. Yeah,
but not
yeah,
Footprints, which is
yeah, yeah.
the travelogue. So this is a squeeze at the height of their budget busting,
Yeah.
and it definitely looks like it was an expensive video. The set looks absolutely massive. It might be one of those TV tricks where the set is actually quite small, but you look at it on screen, you've gone, this isn't just a performance video like something like like Footprints, which is someone with a camcorder at a gig and walking
Mm.
around, just filming the band, and it's feeling like it's quite casual. This felt like there was a lot of thought and effort into it. I wanted a bit of a story, a bit of a message. It fits in very nicely with the lyric as well, but no Jules, which
Mm.
which is interesting. He probably would have been doing would he been doing the tube at that sort of time, 87?
Yes, I think so. He would have been. He would have been.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, that was just before the Frank era, wasn't it? When he was so busy and tired all the time. I mean, the first time I saw Squeeze was on the Frank tour, and he didn't fall asleep at the piano, but he was looking like he could easily do that. He had his head on his hands. Well, he had his head on his hands, just playing with one hand at one point, and he did look exhausted, totally
Mm.
exhausted. And yeah, I guess with this video, I guess this song, I think it's a good place to start if you want to explore this particular era of Squeeze where they were really maybe on the edge again of sort of being big again. Because they did headline Madison Square Garden again, didn't they, in '87?
That's right.
What a
This is
feeling!
the sort
Yeah,
of height of their
yeah,
super popularity, I think.
yeah. And I sort of wonder whether Glenn and Chris's distaste for the song maybe has got something to do with this. They always seemed uncomfortable every time A&M started to kind of try and push them too far in one direction or tried to push them in some way that they felt uncomfortable with. I think they were always, in a way, they seemed sort of happier being left to their own devices. Even if they weren't going to be, the biggest band in the world, they seemed happier just being left to do their thing in the way they wanted to do it. That's why Frank was such a successful album artistically, because they sound like they're just having fun making the kind of record they want to make. Whereas on Babylon and On, like you said before, the sound has got that sort of American sheen to it. And we
Mm.
know they spent a lot of money on the album because the Frank album, which came afterwards, they had to completely pull back on
Yes.
the budget, didn't they?
Yes.
The classic story of Glenn's friend making the sandwiches in the studio, and the ants at the mixing desk, that kind of thing. So this was their big '80s moment again, I think. And I think there's something about 8535937 because it wasn't. I suppose it wasn't. Well, no, it was a hit in America. You're saying it was
It
it
was,
was a
yes,
hit in America.
and I think got into the top 40 in the UK as well. I
Yeah,
think it's one of
yeah,
the few that did both was a hit on both sides of the Atlantic, which is quite unusual
yeah,
for a Squeeze record.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. There's just one last thing I wanted to say about the song, and I think they really missed a trick. They should have done the final chorus should have been the other guy's number rather than the eight five three
Oh,
five nine
right.
three seven
Okay, yeah.
because he's calling the number because he calls the other number, doesn't he?
Yes.
Can't get through to him either. So the twist should have been there should have been a different number, and then maybe it might have been Andy can't get to the phone, or Alan
Yes.
can't get to the phone, or something, and that that might have given us a bit of a kind of sense of completion about it. I
Some
don't know.
closure to that song, to that great story that ends on a question mark, which is quite unusual for a Squeeze song. You tend to get full things, someone's life, someone's relationship done through a song. There's a sense of it ending, thinking like the Letting Goes, even Some Fantastic Place as well, arguably is one that does that. But this is
Yes,
one
very much so.
and perhaps it's part of the appeal. It's just that it's left is thinking, what's going on here? What's going? Mill Hill, Bermondsey, Angela, Andy, and his and his errant ways there. What's going on? Well, if you're listening, Chris and Glenn, please part 2. I don't think they won't even do part 1, so I don't think part 2 will ever see the light of day. But a nice idea nonetheless.
Yeah, I think even though we don't know, I think the mournfulness of the fade out and the way that the message keeps repeating, even though we're not told, I think we're meant to read into it, aren't we? I think
Yes.
I've always interpreted the song as, yeah, absolutely, she is with the guy, and absolutely, when he goes to find them, they're not going to be there. I don't get any sense that this story has a happy ending.
No,
It just seems to me like it's just built as a kind of tragedy, which we don't get to see the end of, but we kind of know where it's going, don't we?
Exactly. Just look at the front cover. Look at that guy on the phone. Look how glum he is. I think he's the protagonist in this story, and he's describing or showing what's going to be at the end of that line as well. So hopefully part 2. Who knows? We do hear that there's going to be some old and new Squeeze stuff coming out in 2024. So hopefully this will be part of it. I doubt it, but you never know. Squeeze can surprise. Okay, well, I'm going to say thank you very much, James, for that absolutely brilliant discussion there on a very unforgotten, unloved track within the Squeeze back catalogue. And we'll perhaps talk about another song another time.
Definitely, yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was what you might call a deep dive.
It was, and there'll be plenty more deep dives. So get your diving kit ready, and we'll go into the waters that is Squeezeback's catalogue. Very poor metaphor there. I'll work on that one. Thanks again, James. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Adrian.
So you've heard our opinions, but what do you think? Come and join us on our Facebook group, our Instagram page, or our X page to discuss further. To find our contact details, go to www.linktr.ee/Squeeze Podcast. That's www.linktr.ee/Squeeze Podcast.